Imagine being the strongest in your village, mindlessly following the commands of your village leader. But when you're betrayed by the very people you grew up with, you agree to retrieve the elixir of life in a mysterious paradise in exchange for a free and fulfilling life. The anime opens with a beheading, an execution that requires a high degree of skill, but strangely, something goes wrong. As the executioner swings his blade, he's horrified to see his blade snap upon clashing with our MC's neck, Gabimaru. Gabimaru is clearly depressed, wondering why he still has to suffer, especially living a life filled with bloodshed. Taken back to his cell, we see Sajiri Yamada as Seaman profiling Gabimaru, uttering that Gabimaru was born a shinobi in the village of Awagakure, and breaking a blade with his flesh isn't too uncommon for someone from Awagakure. Sajiri asks if Gabimaru can show off some of his ninjutsu, but Gabimaru refuses, eventually taken out to be executed by burning. Gabimaru acknowledges that death by burning is quite tortuous, as the victim is forced to endure pain until the toxic fumes take them out. But in the present, the men seem to be having trouble with burning Gabimaru, as it seems only his clothes are affected. In his cell, Sajiri is forced to avert her eyes whilst recording the events that happened today, asking Gabimaru about his past. Gabimaru says his parents were slain when he was a child by his village chief, a mystery he has yet to solve. Plus, as a shinobi, Gabimaru had no emotions and hunted as he was told to. Sajiri asks how Gabimaru was captured, hearing that Gabimaru wanted to leave his village, but his fellow shinobi ended up betraying him, something Gabimaru believes the village chief had orchestrated. Up next, Gabimaru is to be executed by bulls, a method where the victim is ripped apart by two mighty bulls. When Gabimaru's execution starts, he subtly pulls back against the bulls, completely ruining his execution, but this makes Sajiri call out Gabimaru for lying, seeing as he clearly has the will to live. Sajiri asks for more information on the reason why Gabimaru wanted to leave his village, and seeing as there is no point in hiding it, Gabimaru reveals that since he was the strongest in his village, the village chief had asked for his daughter, Yui, to marry Gabimaru. Gabimaru was disgusted at how naive Yui was, annoyed that Yui had tried teaching him proper etiquette and manners, and so Gabimaru left the village to get away from her. When Gabimaru had told the village chief of his departure, the village chief had requested Gabimaru take on one final task, but that was when his fellow shinobis had cornered and captured him. Gabimaru says his life isn't as interesting as others had hoped, but as Sajiri heads through town later that night, she is warned by her fellow executioner to be wary of Gabimaru, especially since his alias is Gabimaru the Hollow, a man with no emotions. Apparently, there are rumors of an elixir of life from Shinsenkyo that can grant anyone immortality. And with Sajiri hearing that even 20 men could barely capture Gabimaru, she deduces that Gabimaru is still hiding something. The next day, the executioners attempt to boil Gabimaru alive with some searing oil, but even such a horrific method doesn't faze Gabimaru. Seeing as it's finally her time to shine, Sajiri asks for Gabimaru to be escorted underground, and upon entering into a creepy-looking room, Sajiri reveals herself to be a sword tester from Edo. Sajiri dawns from the Yamada clan, a group of people that test out swords and act as executioners, and seeing as Sajiri is a woman capable of being bestowed the Seaman role, Gabimaru suddenly flinches as he can detect killing intent from Sajiri. Feeling fear, Gabimaru suddenly breaks free from his cuffs, and as Sajiri appears behind him with a slash, Gabimaru instinctively leaps back to evade. Finally shedding blood, Gabimaru continues to evade Sajiri's advances, listening in as Sajiri declares that a person's true nature is revealed right before their death. Having pulled together Gabimaru's history, Sajiri declares that Gabimaru still wants to live, especially since he loves his wife. Suddenly hit with a wave of emotions, Gabimaru remembers the fond memories he had with Yui, becoming enraged as he steals a sword only to begin clashing blades with Sajiri. Sajiri presses further by asking why Gabimaru continues to lie to himself, but Gabimaru refuses to listen, flashing back to a time when Yui had pointed out how kind Gabimaru was to her. When Gabimaru had reminded Yui that he had been hollow his entire life, Yui says a hollow man would have never accepted her, especially with such a horrific scar on her face. Yui knew that men in her village are sent off to hunt and gather, whilst women are to stay at home and bear children. Something her father recognized, hence, he was the reason why Yui had her scar. To prove she was right, Yui had given Gabimaru a quick kiss, making Gabimaru blush, and is the reason why Yui loves Gabimaru. In the present, Gabimaru begins crying that he is irredeemable, all whilst memories of Yui accepting him for who he is flashes through his mind. Gabimaru had wanted to quit his shinobi life and live alongside Yui peacefully, but Gabimaru knew his lineage along with the village chief would never allow such a life, making Gabimaru cry that he can never be normal. Luckily, Sajiri shows off an official pardon that will grant Gabimaru full immunity to all of his crimes along with full protection moving forward. Before Sajiri can grant such an offer to Gabimaru, she says Gabimaru must first visit Shinsenkyo, a place people consider paradise or heaven to retrieve something. In the past, travelers had reached Shinsenkyo by traveling southwest beyond the Ryukyu Kingdom, all baffled by the gorgeous and dreamlike scenery, just like the paradise they had envisioned. When the shoguns had heard that the elixir of life could be found on Shinsenkyo, they sent more parties to search for the item. But when the parties returned, strange flowers were seen growing from the men's corpses. Such a tale baffles Gabimaru, but Sajiri says that all sorts of criminals will be sent to the island to search for the elixir, and the one that is successful will be given a free life. To top things off, Sajiri says that the report shows that Yui has hopes that Gabimaru will return one day, having shut herself off from everyone, something that fires Gabimaru up. When the other executioners call out Sajiri for not executing Gabimaru, they all draw their spears ready to slay Gabimaru themselves. But with a single exhale, Gabimaru sets his body ablaze with his ninjutsu. In the blink of an eye, Gabimaru diffuses the situation by taking down the surrounding men, only to agree to help Sajiri track down the elixir of life. Sajiri says they'll first head to Edo, and with Gabimaru agreeing to take on whatever comes his way, he wishes for Yui to wait for the day he reunites with her. In the past, Sajiri's father, Kichiji Yamada Seaman, was once tasked with beheading a convicted storyteller, and with clean precision, Sajiri's father was able to lob off the storyteller's head. Strangely, even though their head was cut off, the storyteller continued to tell a story, a feat Sajiri wishes to replicate. As Sajiri grew up, she began practicing her executions, naturally garnering attention seeing as she was female, but sadly with every person she slain, Sajiri began to feel more guilty. Aizen Yamada as Seaman had advised Sajiri to not fear her actions, but during her next execution, Sajiri had performed her duties as normal, but Aizen utters that the fear within her is causing Sajiri to give the convicted a painful death. Sajiri has since wondered how she can become more fearless, wondering if there is someone she could execute without feeling any emotions. But in the present day, we see various criminals gathered near the ocean. The announcer first introduces the 11th Taishigun, Tokagawa Nariyoshi, but hearing that name, the gathered criminals begin booing the man. Off to the side, Sajiri notices that Tanio Saikichi, a burglar amongst the crowd, along with Nikimaru the arsonist, Kido Shuken the murderer, plus various other deadly criminals. Silencing the criminals, the announcer says the person who successfully retrieves the elixir of life will be given a life pardon in the form of a certificate, a statement that catches everyone's attention. Sajiri suddenly spots Adachi Matagoro, a criminal that targets women and children for pleasure, someone that makes Sagiri wonder if she would feel guilty putting down. At the same time, we see Gabimaru bored out of his mind, but suddenly Yuzuraha, a fellow criminal, says it's a pleasure to meet Gabimaru, a little disappointed he isn't as big or scary looking as she expected. When the announcer tries telling everyone about what they can expect when heading to Shinsenkyo, the criminals all cry that they're bored, prompting Aoki to ask the criminals to take off their masks, revealing the corpse of their former sergeant who visited the paradise. Aoki says the body of their sergeant is no longer human, and when the sergeant returned, there were lumps on their body that sprouted into flowers. Aoki reveals that 60 of their men had also gone missing on their most recent expedition, something that begins to freak out some of the criminals, but Nirugai speaks up, asking if there truly is an elixir of life to be found on the island. Aoki says the criminals are allowed to refuse the offer if they want, prompting a tattooed-looking man to leave the scene, but instantly Aizen takes his life. Aoki declares that each criminal will have a member of the Yamada Asiman clan monitoring them, and if the criminals act up, the Yamada members will be free to put them down. Aoki adds that the criminals won't be able to leave the island by boat if their monitors aren't with them. But to make things worse, Tokugawa orders for the criminals to decide who will board the boats and head to paradise, giving Chobei Aza the cue to eliminate one of his competitors. Seeing as neither Aoki nor any other shogun is against Chobei's actions, the criminals suddenly start a massive brawl, each slaying each other with underhand tactics, all whilst Gabamaru patiently observes everyone. Aoki is weirded out when he sees Tokugawa enjoying the bloodshed before him. And when Tokugawa asks for the criminals, he should be looking forward too. One of the shoguns starts off by pointing out how talented Chobei is, having established a bandit village in the mountains of Io at such a young age. Next is Yuzuriha, who is a kunoichi and was part of the invasion of Sajua Castle. As for Gantetsu Saitamiya, he is well known for his masterful swordplay. Finally is Rokuruta, the giant monster that seems to be unfazed by the surrounding violence. But when the shogun points out that Gabamaru is supposed to be the most deadly of them all, we see that Gabamaru has yet to slay anyone. Following Sajiri, she suddenly hears Aizen calling her out for being afraid, reminding Sajiri that her weaknesses will only handicap her when they arrive on the island. Aizen declares that Sajiri isn't fit to wield a sword, reminding Sajiri of her upbringing as members of the Yamada clan at a very young age are tasked with testing swords, beheading criminals, and making medicine from corpses. Sadly, Sajiri was always bullied by other kids, all mocking her for being the daughter of the so-called neck-chopper cannibal Asa. Even though Sajiri tried suppressing her emotions, she was naturally drawn to the sword, strangely able to see disturbing reflections of the truth in the blade she wields. In the present, we see 3 criminals rally together to escape their entrapment, all declaring that they'll attack Sajiri and steal her blade. Before Aizen can intervene, Sajiri offers to put them down, stealing her resolve even though the souls of those she's slain still scare her. As Sajiri easily decapitates the 3 attacking criminals, she is suddenly surprised to hear Gabamaru confront Tokugawa, asking why they have to slay others to go on the expedition. Annoyed, Aoki asks a fellow criminal to slay Gabamaru in exchange for a guaranteed spot to the island. But as the criminal tosses a rock towards Gabamaru, Gabamaru easily dodges, only to ask the criminal if he feels bad for taking another's life. When the criminal says he could care less, Gabamaru gets serious, declaring he'll slay those who try to take his freedom. In an instant, Gabamaru begins dismantling the weaklings before him, taking one life after the other, even accidentally breaking free from their entrapment, only to continue his brawl in the nearby ocean. As the blood from the corpses stain Gabamaru and the ocean around him, the onlookers are disturbed by what they see, but Sajiri suddenly realizes what she was missing. Sajiri says she has been afraid to take the lives of others, when she should develop the resolve to shoulder the lives she has taken, just like what Gabamaru has been doing. As Sajiri sheds some tears, she announces that she will be the one to put Gabamaru down, and with that, Aoki announces the 10 participants that will be boarding the ships, starting with Chobi the Bandit King, Gantetsu Sai, the Sword Dragon, Kain the Hunter, Nurugai of Sanka, Horobu the Killing Prayer, Gabamaru the Hollow, Akajinu the Cannibal Courtesan, Yuzuriha of Keishu, Makaya Moro the Apostate, and Rokuroda the Giant. The next day, the criminals are given their Yamada monitor, only for everyone to board a ship heading straight for Shinsenkyo, Paradise Island.